I'm really glad you decided to join us again for the community stream. This is going to be our first week of once a week broadcasting. I mistakenly last week said we were going to do this on Tuesday, and as you were seeing, we are actually doing it on Thursday. I made an announcement on the Facebook group. I hope that didn't cause anybody too much inconvenience. Of course, these broadcasts will be available after 10 a.m. on Thursday, any time that you want to watch them. We'd encourage you to tune in live when we do our premieres because you can take part in the online chat and discussion. We'd love to have you be a part of that as well. Today we're going to start out in our first segment at the Texas Producers Co-op. We're going to be visiting with Justin Bellar and Terry Peck. They were kind enough to give us some time, and we're going to ask them about a few things. Justin's going to give us an ag update, talk about some of the things that are going on in ag in the area as planting season is underway. And Terry's going to kind of fill us in on some of the things going on. They've opened the store back up and kind of let you guys know what they've got going on out there. Next, we have a great surprise for you guys. I was able to sit down with Ken King as I was able to do an interview online with him earlier today. He let me ask him quite a few questions about a lot of the things that are going on. And, I really appreciate the fact that he was, willing to sit down and communicate with us, his constituents. I know a lot of you guys that are watching out there that don't live here anymore, that may not be your representative, but it's really neat to hear their take from a state legislature standpoint on some of the challenges that we're facing under this current situation. I also appreciate the fact that we were able to just sit back and visit a little bit about family and, how he got into politics. I think it'll give you a chance to get to know Ken a little bit better if you don't know him already. And we really do appreciate him doing that. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Finally, on the encouraging word, we're going to have Cam Givan from the Methodist Church here in Sudan, as he's going to bring us our message. And I think it's one that each of you will really enjoy. We really appreciate him bringing that to us. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our next part of the programming. Thanks for joining the Community Stream. Hey everybody, we got a special treat today. I've got a couple of guests that I'm going to bring in here in just a second. If you live in Sudan, I call it Sudan's best kept little secret, but we've got the co-op out across the railroad track. I call it a little secret because people don't realize all that's out at the store. Also, a lot of you guys that do ag business with us around here know about the co-op and know, not only are they a cotton gin, but they have a lot of agronomy services and other things. So I'm happy today to welcome Justin Bellar and Terry Peck from out at the co-op. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. I want to kind of just go through a few things and give you guys a chance to talk. I know everybody's curious. I know the co-op's back opened up some, just like everywhere, trying to be careful, but we're going to open back up to the public. Ag has been essential, deemed essential throughout the entire thing, and I do kind of use that word sparingly because I think everybody's essential. But, we were able to keep operating just like we were in real estate. But do you guys, have y'all seen has it been hard? Let me start with Justin. Justin, has it been hard to do the things y'all normally do this time of year with the current situation?
My role hasn't really changed much because it's a lot like yours, a lot of phone, email, we deliver a lot of things. It's changed a little bit. We do have a few customers that like to come in for face-to-face interactions and stuff. But, I definitely think Terry's probably had more struggles than I have on that. But, anytime there's any type of change or uncertainty, it gets people a little nervous. And, we've kind of been trying to keep a positive outlook for people, but at the same time, be responsible for the well-being of not only our customers, but our employees too.
Well, Terry, how about you? I mean, what is it? I know it's been hard for all of us not getting to go in and get us a Coke every day out of the co-op. How about for you?
Yeah, I had a lot of requests for curbside service for that, but I didn't think it'd be good for us breathing on y'all's drinks and everything. But yeah, it's been a pretty good struggle out here, just having actually the phone rang a whole lot, so we were answering the phone and trying to wait on customers all at the same time and trying to figure out what everybody needed. and we're just glad to be open back up so y'all can come in and get that drink.
Well, and one of the things I would say is y'all did a great job getting us through all of it. I know it probably seemed longer to the folks working in there, but y'all made it really easy. And I heard a lot of people compliment the way that the service was done out there. So, one of the things that I know folks were having to kind of deal with is the co-op's a meeting place for a lot of people. It's one of the spots that got hit hard because it's through the coffee room over there on the side, and then also back in the gin office. That's a gathering place for people. And then around the cash register in there by the Coke machine there's a lot of world's problems solved in there. So,
Oh, yeah.
but one of the things I would say or wanted to kind of ask you guys about just to let people know, I mentioned at the first, and I didn't want that to come across wrong when I said it's a best kept little secret, but a lot of times when I'm bringing people in that are thinking about moving into town that are coming here from somewhere else, a lot of them are really surprised when they get out and see all the things that you guys have in the store. Just for the people that live in town. And Terry, tell me, how's that been for y'all during this time? Because I know a lot of folks, did you still have a lot of the people coming from town getting stuff too? I know the farmers were, but did you still have guys coming out from town?
Yeah, we sold a lawnmower here and there and just a few items, people needing some paint. Mm-hmm. We were able to take care of that for them. There were times whenever we weren't real sure what somebody needed. We would let one person come in the store and look around, see what they needed, and help them out any way we could.
Sure. Well, and it's been challenging. It's been kind of it's been a little bit hard to understand because some of the big box stores were able to just stay open, and I know they were following some guidelines, but I do think that we're moving into a point of reality right now as we try to go forward, and people are being careful, but there's just something to be said for putting your hands and eyes on something when you're looking at it before you buy it.
Right.
I think if anything, I think all the folks that tune in to our Neighbors to Neighbors would probably like for each of you guys to kind of tell a little bit about how y'all landed out at the co-op. I know, Terry, you've been there longer than Justin, but you guys both have ties and have grown up here in the community. Tell us a little bit about how you got out there, Justin, and what kept you in Sudan.
Yeah, so I'm a 1996 graduate, and I moved off for a little bit, and then ended up coming back. Actually, started here in agronomy up at Earth, and ended up going to Littlefield for a little bit, and then in 2016 had the opportunity to come here to the co-op, and man, it made sense. I get to work with a lot of guys I grew up with, went to school with, and just a lot of really good people here. So it's been having Terry to bounce a lot of questions off of and things like that's been really good. So I've enjoyed it. I can't believe it's been 4 years already. It's been really good. I've really enjoyed being back in the community. I never really left the community even when I was working in those other towns, but to really just be full blown in the community now, it's been really good.
Terry, go ahead. You're up.
Well, I don't normally feel old, but Justin made me feel pretty old just then.
I felt old saying 96.
We moved here in 82. Dad got a job out there with SPS, and I graduated in 84, went off, joined the Navy, went around the world, come back, ended up here, had a job, got laid off, and come out here and talked to Dennis Flowers, and he gave me a job, and I swept floors and have worked my way up in this management position. I've been here 26 years now. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Started here in 94. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is I always joke around, but Terry, it's always kind of cool because exactly what each one of us uses. You could do a really good job of ordering stuff if we need it. I don't think anywhere around people have the luxury of what we have, being able to, if we know what we need and we go out there and we can talk to you about it, you can usually get it. And especially if we're going to routinely need it, you can usually keep one in stock for us.
Yeah.
That's kind of small town America too, that's all of us remember back to a time even before the co-op had the store in these small towns where you had the shopkeeper, and he knew how many irrigation wells each guy had and how many filters he needed and and all that. And that's something that's still unique in Sudan. And that the guys that work out of the co-op, they do a great job in that store of doing that. So, like I said, when I said best kept secret, I think everybody's always kind of surprised when they come out there and they see that there's a barber shop, there's stuff you can get your hardware, main hardware supplies, clothing. Not to mention, most of us in town buy our fuel through the co-op. So it's been
tire shop too.
What's in the yes, exactly.
Tire shop, and mechanic shop.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is, those services, a lot of those services, it's a benefit of living in an ag community because they definitely benefit the growers that are part of the co-op out there that gin cotton, but then it's a benefit for the people that live here with them because we get probably more service than would be available to us if it was just based off the people using them for personal use, so.
Well, it never fails if you're going to have plumbing problems or something. It's in the middle of the night. I don't know how this place has saved me. Even before I worked here, it saved me having my water off all through the night and stuff. So yeah, it's been really, really handy.
Before we're done, we're going to try to get Terry to let us give everybody on the World Wide Web his cell phone number in case you need to come meet you out there. Man. No, I'm kidding, Terry.
ER 549.
No, one of the things I thought, we got y'all on, and I mean, I know Justin, y'all are in full swing now planting. That probably puts a little more load even on what y'all do in the store too when people get out in the fields and get busy. I remember when I was in the crop insurance business, it was kind of the opposite for us a lot of times because when they got busy, it got kind of quiet because everybody was out in the fields working. But are y'all seeing a pretty good uptick? Can you tell that the planting season's in full swing?
Yeah, so really starting right around Mother's Day is when it really breaks loose. It seems to kind of just be the time when people go, okay, it's time to get going. But, we've had a roller coaster. We've had some really good moisture early, and now we're kind of dry. So guys are kind of dragging their feet a little bit. I got this cold front coming in. So yeah, it's been kind of interesting. Cotton price has really gone down. It was pretty weak anyway, and then the whole uncertainty with this pandemic's got things down. But man, these farmers, they're resilient. Thank goodness they have short-term memory, and God bless them, because I mean these communities wouldn't be out here if it wasn't for those guys. And Amen. So I just kind of ask everybody to keep them in your prayers and your thoughts as you're going through that every day, because they are definitely going through some challenging times. So
well, and this year started out kind of strange. I mean, I was looking back a few weeks ago, and we have a men's Bible study that we've been meeting online since the COVID deal. But we actually, when we started our prayer list at the start of the COVID deal, was thanking God for all the rain, because we were so wet at the start of the spring break. Right before spring break, we got a good rain.
Yeah.
And we are, I mean, I want to say this, it's been a very dry April that we just concluded, but we've got some deep moisture, don't we? If
we do.
Need some help.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's really exciting to know where we're at in as far as that goes, because we're usually not in that scenario. Yeah, it's just, it's real expensive even to get seed in the ground, and just a lot of uncertainty. And it's not just cotton farmers. I mean, which I know you're close tied to the beef market, beef cattle, those guys are struggling. Dairies are struggling. I mean, we just really need this economy to get back going.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think we've seen how fragile the supply chain is too. Just a little bobble and things. Yeah. There's going to be ripples for a while. I do believe when we get open back up, we'll see some pent-up momentum that'll help us. I'm being optimistic there probably, but I think we all felt like things were starting to kind of turn the right direction before this happened. We were seeing some positive indications things were looking better. I know even in our real estate business, we've stayed fairly busy through this, but we definitely can't stay at this pattern we're in right now because our inventory is getting light. Things got to get kind of back to normal.
Right.
I think anxiety's got to leave the equation too, because that always causes people to take pause on doing anything, when they're nervous. But, one of the things we're going to have on this same episode is I'm actually interviewing King later today, our representative from the state, our state representative from District 88. And that was one of the things I was going to ask him about, kind of talk to him about. There's been a lot of crazy things going on the last few years in those markets. And
Mm-hmm.
I think when you live in an ag community, we're more in touch with that than people that live in the city. One of the things that has been interesting is watching the rest of the world understand the balance of things when they can't find toilet paper on the shelf, or, there's not enough meat on the shelf. And I hope from that, though, it's positive. I think you guys recognize it each year how you can have a crop in the field and look like you've got it made. I think back to, I guess it was 2 or 3 years ago when the area down around Beulah had that beautiful crop going,
Mm-hmm.
and we had that hail. And, we
Not
know
really, no.
there's an old saying, the old timers, y'all have heard them say it, but the years that promise the most usually a lot of times will deliver the least, and the ones that show the least amount of promise sometimes will surprise you.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping this is one of those that's kind of making us worry a little on the front, because it's going to be rewarding in the end, But Terry, one of the things I'd like to ask you, do you see a seasonal difference out at the store, just to kind of let some of them know? I mean, can you see the purchasing and stuff in the stores? Is it a lot different from spring to summer to fall with all the different things y'all handle that are yard, lawn, and garden related and home related and things such as that?
Yeah, we pretty much have one season here. It seems like, except during this COVID, we're normally busy here in the store.
Yeah.
Pretty much year round. Usually after the fall harvest, we have a little lull, but man, it's really picking up now. We got some plants in the greenhouse, and that really helps pick things up out here. So yeah, there's not a lot of seasonal things out here.
Yeah. Well, and I felt like that the greenhouse deal was one of those too, that it really benefits you to be open. I mean, so you can do that.
Yeah.
Those that folks like to do. It's kind of ironic. We're pushing ag all through the COVID crisis. You look up in states like Michigan, and they're not letting them buy seed to plant a garden up there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I don't know if that was intentional or it was kind of a misdirected deal, but it's still crazy. One of the other things why I've still got you guys on here, I know that one of the things that the co-op, the guys that work out there, all y'all kind of cross-train, which is a unique deal that a lot of businesses don't do. But you've got guys that fill a lot of different roles during different times of the year, don't you?
Yeah, we definitely do. Of course, the agronomy piece is very seasonal, but to keep the staff that we do, we employ over 40 full-time employees all year, so they have to be pretty versatile in what they're willing to do, and they all do a really good job with that. So it's kind of unique, but it's also very helpful. It kind of frees up some people to be able to do different things and experience different things.
Yeah. Well, and do y'all now, Terry? Y'all more in the store. Your hours kind of vary with the seasons, because during ginning season, you guys are open 7 days a week.
7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
During the harvest. Once the guys get out of the field and got all the crop out, we kind of go back normal hours. But when they're needing stuff, we're here for them.
Mm-hmm. Again, that's another one of those benefits, and I hate to admit it, but during ginning season, it's always one of those deals. As a resident of the community, you can kind of run out after hours and pick stuff up a little later and
get you a Coke at 7 p.m.
Yeah, you got them guys like me that walk in right when you're trying to close. But and one important point I want to make with TPC is that this store is in Sudan, but this still services a big area. You got folks from all over that do business out there, and it brings a lot of people into town. But also, y'all do a lot of delivery. Get a lot of y'all do mobile tire service, I know, and I just think it's neat for the people that are watching on Neighbors to Neighbors to kind of understand. That's probably something that's different from a lot of those that have been gone for several decades to understand the size of y'all's footprint. So,
yeah, we'll go as far north as to Hereford, and we've gone as far south as really Wellman, south of Seagraves, and then we'll go east of Lubbock and into New Mexico. So it's a pretty big footprint. It's been really neat to see just kind of the evolution of Texas producers and kind of how it's brought people in. So it's been neat to be a part of that for sure.
Well, one of the things I know, and I'm trying to remember the timing on this. Usually every year we have a deal in the summer. We're getting close to the time, aren't we, where y'all usually do the little barbecue or the little cook off and stuff outside. We're probably not going to get to have that this year, are we? Or have you heard?
It's funny you say that. Some of the coffee drinkers this morning were actually asking that if it had been. It's usually, I want to say, the last weekend in June, right before the 4th of July, and who knows what's going to be going on then. But
about the second weekend of June, because it's about the same weekend as my family reunion.
Oh, maybe that's,
yeah.
One pretty big deal that's affected the co-op already is we've had to postpone our annual meeting where we pay our dividends back. That's usually a pretty big, 300-400 people event. So that's still in the air is when we're going to have that. So it's definitely affected just our normal business and things people are accustomed to.
Sure.
It's just, but we'll get through it. It's like you said, you just got to kind of have a positive attitude and just know that, things are going to get better.
Well, and this is one of those unique times too, where we're it's not just one area that people are having to adjust and change their life up for this. I mean, it's all over the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a gentleman today who has a son that's going to be a junior in high school at another school. And I mean, one of the big questions is, will we be playing football this fall?
Yeah.
In these small towns, that's a big deal. Sports is a big deal. So I guess otherwise, I don't really have a whole lot of other questions. If you guys have anything you'd like to say out there, I know the folks that were kind of one of our focus areas that we tried to put the community stream together for some of these folks that don't get to come out. I know y'all have a lot of those guys and gals that come into the store. And I mean, I want to let them know that you guys miss them.
Definitely miss them. Yeah. And I've really enjoyed, Monty, y'all putting this together. I mean, I know it takes a lot of time and effort and it's been neat just to kind of read some of the messages. And one thing I was really enjoying was all the history of Sudan. I mean, man, that was, it was all familiar to me, just hearing my granddad talk and stuff, but, just getting to read articles and see pictures. So everyone that's been active on this, Neighbors and Neighbors, thank you guys very much. I've really enjoyed it.
Terry, you got anything?
Yeah, I just want to thank all of our customers through this time that we've been going through here for being patient with us. I know it was hard to get out here, and I know the way things are nowadays, when you want something, you want it right then. And we're in the store here answering 5 or 6 phone calls at one time and trying to get parts for 2 or 3 other people that are sitting outside and waiting. And I just want to thank everybody for their patience with us, and we really appreciate everyone's business.
Definitely.
Well, and
we don't take that for granted, for sure.
Well, and I think it goes without saying, we appreciate how y'all work through all this. I know a lot of people talk about folks that are, kind of putting themselves in harm's way. But really, I mean, guys like y'all running the store, running the curbside service, the people that are keeping the restaurants open, all these things where you're going out and meeting it, a lot of fearless people that make us proud to live where we live. And I think moving forward, all of us are really pushing to try to get things, back to going. We got to be smart. But at the same time, I think it's really important for us to get back to what we love so much about this community in this area is the fact that we're a social community. We like to interact with one another. So we got to have a little patience to get through that. But again, I appreciate y'all being here today. And man, if we could, we might have y'all come back sometime once things are up and rolling a little bit better. Maybe talk about some of the events if we get to go ahead and take part in them, later in the year. So
definitely.
All right. Well, guys, I appreciate it, and thank y'all for joining.
Thank you, Monty.
Thanks for having us, Monty.
We're back. We've got a really special episode today, our segment. We've got Ken King from our House of Representatives, District 88. He's going to talk with us a little today. Ken, thanks for joining us.
Glad to do it. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, well, Ken, we've been having these episodes here for the last few weeks. We've got a lot of our folks especially the ones that are at risk, that aren't able to get out of the assisted livings, nursing homes, and even some of them that are just at home. just trying to kind of put something out there, but it's kind of grown into something a little bit more. Got a lot of ex-Sudan residents, and not just Sudan, the Lamb County area, which is in your district. But you were so kind to come on. We really do appreciate you being here. I think probably one of the first things would be good if you could just tell our folks a little bit about yourself. Some of them, I know a lot of them know who you are, but let them know kind of what led you to serve as our state representative.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Canadian, and my wife and I moved back to Canadian in the late 90s and started having a family. And having a family led me into local politics, and I'd been on just about every board around town, including the school board. And kind of a long story short, but anyway, my school board time, we had done a tax swap that we had permission from the state on, without getting in the weeds of school finance. After we did the deal and that we had permission from the governor and the lieutenant governor and the speaker at the time, as well as the Texas Education Agency, they came back 10 months after the fact and said we owed $4 million we didn't tax for. I spent the next session, still as president of my school board, as a lay lobbyist trying to get the money back. And when I found out I wasn't ever going to get that accomplished, I told a friend of mine who was also on the board with me that the only way we were ever getting money back is if one of us had a seat out there. And I drew the short straw. So, or maybe your listeners and viewers drew the short straw, depending on how you look at it, because I've been there ever since. But I had never had an ambition or a desire to be in politics. It was just something that I got. It evolved, and I got led into it, and and it's really been a good thing in my life, and I've enjoyed it. But it was never a plan.
I understand. Well, that's kind of refreshing, honestly, because I think we've got way too many career politicians that kind of set out to do that from the get-go, don't you?
I absolutely agree with you. There are way too many people vote to keep their job instead of doing their job.
I would agree. Agree. I want to kind of ask you a few questions while we're here. Like I say, a lot of our folks are real familiar with who you are. We appreciate all that you do representing our district, and I think that was a point that made me feel pretty good that you got into the politics side of things because you were trying to make had some things you wanted to get accomplished, and that's really a great reason to go into politics. So
I think it's probably the only reason too, because it's in Texas, a state representative makes $600 a month, and it's it's supposed to be every other year, but trust me, it's a full-time job. And if you're not doing it, I always say that Texas is extremely blessed. We have a great majority of 181 elected officials that the vast majority are there for the right reasons.
Yeah,
we have our share of career politicians and the ones that are just want the title, but by and large, my colleagues, I believe in them, and I think they try to do the right thing.
I tend to agree with you, and I think that, there's a lot that's been thrown on y'all this time. I mean, state stuff's always very important, but there's been a big battle going on during all this COVID stuff, dealing with, who controls what. I think it's been an eye-opener for a lot of people to understand that our states do have a lot of control thanks to our founding fathers with the way they say.
Absolutely. And we're our governor. I mean, I think about Greg Abbott daily, and I talk to him every week. He tries to keep the legislature informed on what's going on and what he's going to announce next. And I have friends that tell me they dislike what the governor did this or that, but there's not a right answer. I mean, this is a 100-year pandemic, and there's no playbook for this. And no matter what he does, he's going to have critics, but. I hear people say it all the time. Well, he signed up for the job. Well, he did, but he didn't necessarily sign up for a pandemic. And so, I think ultimately he's doing a good job.
Yeah. Well, and I've been proud to see leadership at our state because we've seen a few of the other states that have lacked leadership.
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely. And leadership breeds leadership. And when our top official is showing leadership, it helps the rest of us down the ticket, if you will.
Yeah.
Continue to do that.
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, and you've kind of already answered it. But how do you support so far? I know there's been some intricacies, like you said, but in general, the governor's plan to kind of reopen the state.
I do. The governor what I really appreciated him for, and the folks in Lamb County, I think would agree with me, when this first started and he was really being pushed to go to a complete statewide shelter-in-place order, he said, I'm not going to treat 200 rural counties like 54 urban counties. I'm not going to force them into this. Number one, we don't have the same needs, but number two, we don't have the resources for it. So I really appreciated him remembering that not all counties are the same. And I'll tell you, he is from Houston and lived in Austin and is not familiar with your needs or my needs particularly, but I've been very appreciative of the fact that he's listening. Like his order yesterday to allow salons to open again this Friday. I wrote him a letter 2 weeks ago, when he started the phase one, and asked him, along with several of my other colleagues that represent rural counties, asked him to do that. And, he listened. He took into account that a county like Lamb County, isn't Lubbock. So,
right. Yeah,
anyway,
and
I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, and I tell you, it's been an eye-opener even at the federal down to the state level, then the state down to the county level, for folks to recognize, we cross those county lines and we don't think about jurisdictions and counties, but the county judges have had a lot thrown on them too that they probably they didn't really sign up for. So
that's right. Well, and they're the bad guys, when they have to shut things down. And I think by and large Texans have done a good job learning how to social distance, learning how to respect their neighbors and, not only their health, but their neighbors' health. And I do believe in this pandemic that had we not taken those steps, the numbers would be a lot worse.
Right.
I think we're on our way out, and the sun's going to rise again, and we're going to keep going. And I hate seeing our economy tank like this.
Yeah.
That's going to create a whole new set of challenges next January when we go to session. So, but ultimately, the governor said from the beginning, the goal is not to cure COVID-19. The goal is to flatten the curve.
Right.
And we've successfully done that for the last month. And it's time to yell go again.
Right. Right. Well, and that was one of the other things I had down. There's a lot of these antibody tests that have been available that are showing us some different things, maybe indicating, and I know there's still a lot of testing and interpreting of that data, but it appears that the morbidity or the mortality rate of this disease, that may have been what they missed, which I'm glad they missed it. But
right.
It looks like we're finding there's more and more asymptomatic people out there that aren't exhibiting symptoms. And I know that scares people in a way, but what is your thoughts on herd immunity? I mean, I know we're in a
I think we have to have it. And I think, if you're young and healthy and not compromised, the more people that get it and survive it, it seems like, it's like chicken pox. If once you get it, having it was really bad, but if you get it, you're not susceptible to it again, and you have an antibody against it. And I think until we develop antibodies, we're going to continue to see spikes and waves of it. But, people who are compromised not just from COVID, they're compromised from other diseases. So I really think the herd immunity at this point is the direction we have to go to some.
I agree. I think I've heard people say it's one of the pathways to let people be able to leave their homes again.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, and really, I mean, I don't know if you're seeing it so much down there. I know the short little amount of traveling I've done, especially in the last 2 weeks, I think most citizens have said, hey, you know what? We've done what we were asked to do. We've been good. We've done our part, and we're done with this. We're moving.
Right.
And because, a month ago when I drove to Amarillo looked like a ghost town. It had about as much traffic as Canadian,
Yes.
And I'm over here today, and people are out, people are going. I see a lot of masks, and people wearing masks everywhere, but there are lots of people out on the streets. And I just think as a people, at some point, the stir crazy is going to get us, and the governor and the president have to move this thing on.
Well, and we're seeing in some of the other states where they've been more ratcheted down on control, and they're not wanting to open up as much. They're starting to have some real civil unrest in those
That's
states.
right. That's right.
Well, this is America. I think people need to remember that, and I think most people do remember it. I think, like you said, we were willing to do what we need to do to flatten the curve. But I do think Texas is a state of independence, and what would you tell Texans? Because I know this is something I hear a lot, but ones that are concerned about the long-term impact on their civil liberties through all this. I mean, are you guys at the state level, or do you think in lockstep for the most part about protecting Texans' rights?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one thing about Texas is private property rights is at the forefront of every debate. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about how we teach our kids in schools, or if it's gun rights, or water, or Texas is a private property rights state, and we're going to continue to be that. I think anytime you have a statewide emergency, whether it's a natural disaster or a pandemic, you may have to concede some of these liberties for a short amount of time, but it doesn't mean you lose them.
Right.
And as long as I'm in this seat, we're going to fight to make sure nobody ever loses civil liberties.
Right. Well, and I think it's easy for people to probably go too far with that, but I think people do see the opportunities when they have a chance to take control of things, and that's probably. Sure. And so it's good to know that we've got. We live in a state that looks out for our independence. Texas.
Absolutely. That's part of the Texas identity is independence and being acting independently. I'll tell you, my chief of staff down in Austin, she's worked for several legislators throughout her career as a staff person, and I'm the only West Texan she's ever worked for, and she's just amazed about the difference of the constituent caseload versus the other parts of the state, and which means that we have less. I mean, and honestly, what it is, it's not that my constituents don't reach out to me, but people that live in the part of the state where we do, we just kind of take care of our own business, and we don't want the government involved. Right. And so, people aren't calling my office every day to fix every little problem. We take care of our own business, and so out here where we live, I think we take this independence and self-reliance far more serious than our urban neighbors.
I think a good point that you made on that early in the interview today was talking about like the hairdressers and the people that just want to go back to work. They don't want to take government assistance. They want to work.
Sure. Well, and my point to the governor on that issue was, listen, as a state, we forced them to be licensed. We forced them to go through hygiene training and sanitary training and all this stuff and most beauty salons were probably the most sanitary of any place we go and congregate before COVID-19. Right. And to say they're the last ones that can't open, I just thought, if with the government scrutiny that those people in that business have to endure, for the government to tell them, yeah, you've done everything we told you to do, but we're going to treat you differently than Walmart and Lowe's, I just thought it was wrong.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your position on that. I think a lot of us would agree. One of the other questions, talking about businesses, and this is one that I've heard a lot of. I wouldn't say water cooler talk, but talk with different folks that have businesses. I've got my own business. Do you see a need at the state level for, I don't know that it's necessarily, I would say, protection, but some type of clarification that there isn't a handoff of liability to somebody when they walk in your establishment? Because I worry about that we've took a paradigm shift, and we changed the fact that I'm having to be held to a much higher level of responsibility now as a business owner when somebody walks into my establishment. Do you think there's a need at the state level to look at tort reform or anything like that at the end of this?
Well, I can tell you this, and I'm a business owner as well, and I have been 100% for tort reform for the last 20 years.
Right.
But in some cases, small businesses we've reformed tort to the point that it's hard to get a fair trial for an honest business now. We've stuck the pendulum so far in the wall to the right. There's, when you have an issue, it's hard to get your case across, I think. As far as any effort to extend tort reforms, I think I don't see the necessity of it. I think tort reform is as solid as it is anywhere in the nation right now on the side of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is our Attorney General has already said he will prosecute frivolous lawsuits.
Right.
So when people come in your establishment and say they get sick and they try to prove they got sick in your establishment, I think our Attorney General and our governor are going to stop a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, session is a crazy place. I think you will probably see some tort reform bills get filed.
Yeah.
But to answer your question specifically, I don't know of anything off the top of my head or anything that's being floated right now.
Well, I think you bring up a good point too. It's the mindset, I think, of each state, on how hard it's going to be for these businesses to open back up if they're taking precautions. I think all of them are going to be careful. I think anybody with any sense wants to take care of their clients and their customers. But I see this as an opportunity in some ways that Texas keeps doing what Texas has been good at, which is making common sense decisions that could help benefit the state from a business standpoint, which kind of leads me to my next question. What do you think about some of these states that are asking for federal assistance and bailout assistance, and they've got a lot of issues that they probably want to use that money for that were pre-COVID related? I know that's been in the news a lot.
Well, I think I think as things slow down, I think Congress will address those issues of people using money in ways they weren't supposed to. It's like the payroll protection money. There was a lot of people that got millions and millions of dollars that shouldn't have got that money.
Right.
But when I was talking to Congressman Arrington about it when it first came out, before anybody was even able to apply, I appreciated his stance on it. His point was, we don't have enough belts and suspenders to force people to do the right thing. But if we wait until we have all of those belts and suspenders put on this money, it'll be too late. There won't be a business there that can use it.
Right.
So I think there's some horrible abuses going on with some of this stimulus money, and it's unfortunate that people are taking it away from businesses that can really use it, and where employers can really use it. But I will say one thing that did happen that I was glad to see: the Democrats backed off of their stance. After the first round of PPP money came out, and the Republicans were proposing a second round because the money ran out so fast, the Democrats came out and said that they would only give that money to that program if 50% of the money was guaranteed to go through to women or minority-owned businesses. Well, you as a business owner know if you get that loan, that money doesn't do you any good. It goes straight to the employee. Mm-hmm. It's all about protecting the employees and keeping them on payroll. So in the Democrats' mind, I guess, or at least in Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer's mind, we're going to punish the American worker because they're working for somebody of the wrong gender or the wrong color. Yeah. That makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
This money is supposed to help keep employees employed and where we're not bankrupting states through unemployment benefits.
Yes. Yeah.
And so anyway, I think it's been horribly abused in some ways, but I think it's been completely necessary. And I think as it shakes out, like the government always tends to do, they'll claw back and we'll figure out how to recoup some of that money and punish those that were the bad actors.
Well, and I think that's a good point. And we've seen some of the companies that have come back and gave money back after they recognized they were
darn right, because what they found out is, hey, we let you have it, and you better enjoy it because we're coming.
Yeah, well, and I think also at the state levels too, Texas has done a good job over the years. We took cuts to our county budgets, and it's been painful for a lot of us. A lot of the things we'd all like to have more funding in certain areas, but the state has tried to be fiscally responsible. And then when you see a state that hasn't, I think they need to be careful not to give money out of the federal ante that's going to go towards things that weren't related to this pandemic. I think
I agree.
Yeah. Well. So I want to shift gears with you a little bit. I got if we got just a few more minutes, talk about something a little bit more. Maybe I'm not going to say not serious, but a little more lighthearted. I know you got some kids that have participated in high school sports. I'm not sure if you still have any kids in school.
I do. I've got a senior in high school.
Well, this has been a tough year for seniors, hasn't it?
It has. It's my daughter. My son's in college, but my daughter's still at home, or they're both home now. But no, my daughter's had it, and like all kids that age, they get to spring break and you start looking for prom and academic banquets and different things, and and it's all, and nothing's happening. And even getting to walk across the stage and get her diploma handed to her it's still up in there, at least in Canadian. There's no plans for an actual graduation yet. So yeah, it's been tough on all these kids.
Well, and one of the questions I was going to ask you, Texas, we all know how serious, and I know up in Canadian they take football pretty serious, but can you see a world without high school football in the fall?
No. And that's the thing too. At some point, the cure is going to get to be worse than the disease.
Right.
And that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier about, I think at this point in time, the governor and the president both recognize that not only is the economy taking, and we're getting dangerously close to not only a recession, but possibly a depression, which would be horrible for everybody in all walks of life, the people are going to revolt. I mean, you can't just lock everybody down from now on because somebody might get sick and God forbid die. I mean, I think so. Yes, I think school opens in the fall. I think we have high school sports again, and I think we move on. I think we have some really smart people around the world that are working day and night for a vaccine for this thing. And I'm no medical expert, but I think it comes sooner rather than later.
Well, I like your optimism, and I think it's something that I share. I've heard through a lot of other people, and we may not all have the exact reasons why we feel that way, but I think it's been just such the opposite thing on the news. I mean, it's been so negative, and if there's any bad news, it seems like we hear it immediately. But one other quick question, and this is kind of back into something a little bit more serious, but I know that you are a livestock producer, I think, Ken, and around livestock. Yep. A lot up in Canadian. These markets have been really hard on the cattle guys. We watched the markets tank. They were already kind of headed that direction before the pandemic hit. And then, at the same time, we're seeing record beef prices in the meat case. And
sure.
I've heard a lot of talk, but I don't know. I think you nailed it earlier when you said Texans are a little more reluctant to want to have intervention from the government. What are your views on the talk that's out there right now about, and I know this may not be such a state issue as it is maybe federal, but, I know there's people talking about the meat packing industry and its impact on beef. Do you have any thoughts there?
Sure. Well, I mean, like I was telling you kind of when we were off air, where I live, sits right in the vortex of the meat packing.
Right.
When you draw a line from Amarillo to Dumas to Givan, Oklahoma to Liberal, Kansas, and back to Amarillo, that's a large chunk of the meat packing in the United States, and for pork and beef. These meat packers, particularly the one that's having the trouble in Dumas, which is JBS, they bring in people from these third world countries, and they all, they congregate 20 to a house, and they bus them out to the plant and pack them in buses, and then their family members also work at these other plants. And so, yeah, the pandemic, that's why the Panhandle is becoming the number one hot spot in the nation. And that's why you're seeing meat counter prices go up, where the cattleman or the rancher is losing out. And I think I think that is a short-term problem. Mm-hmm. I think as we resolve the hot spots and these packing plants come back online, every producer knows there's so much more protein on the market right now than there's ever been, and it's still in the hoof. Unfortunately, we can't get it to market. So I think the shortage for proteins is probably short-lived, but these meat packing plants that did not take the federal and the state directives seriously and continue to do business as normal, I think there's possibly some some bad times coming their way in the future.
Do you have any final thing you want to say to the guys out there before we end the interview?
I guess my thought would be is this too will pass. The president is the president, but the future still is bright. And Texas is a resilient state, and Texans are resilient people. And I see a really rough 2021 session as far as finance goes, and particularly in a redistricting year. And I'm not sure where it's all going to go, but I have faith in this area. And listen, every time our economy tanks, what they do to us in our part of the world, when the rest of the world is rocking and rolling and doing good, they do it on the back of cheap food and cheap fuel.
Right.
Well, our part of the state, that's what we produce, is food and fuel. Well, they can't rebuild this economy without food and fuel. And so I think that puts us in the driver's seat, and I really am pretty bullish about what things are going to look like in the next year.
Well, I like the way you think. Well, listen, Ken, I could sit and talk to you all day. You've been kind to give us your time. I hope we can have you back sometime.
Anytime.
It's been a really great opportunity to get to talk to you, and thank you for being a part of this.
You bet. I appreciate you, Mike.
Thank you.
Good day. Howdy, neighbor. It's a privilege and an honor to join you today on this unique format called Neighbor to Neighbor. And I want to thank Donna Smith and Monty Edwards for allowing me to share in this time together. I'm also feeling real blessed and privileged to be a pastor in Sudan of the First Methodist Church. And I pray that together as we go through this special time in our lives that we will proclaim the presence and purpose and power of God, who is always faithful to love us and to care for us. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share and realize that in this particular time in our lives, we have faced something that this generation has not faced. Our whole world is being transformed by either the fear and confrontation of disease and death, and a lot of that shakes us to the core. But I want to remind you that we serve a God who has given us a faith that overcomes the world, and that we can share in his kingdom and his view of the purpose of life in all creation. Centuries ago, there were map makers that would run out of the known world before they ran out of the parchment paper that they drew on. And these map makers would often sketch a dragon at the edge of this scroll or paper. This was intended to be a sign to the explorer that he was entering a dangerous territory or an unknown territory at his own risk. Many explorers, however, did not perceive the dragon as a map maker's warning sign, but as prophecy. They saw disaster and doom and things beyond the known world as they traveled. Their fear kept them from pushing on to discover the new lands and peoples. On the other hand, people were also traveling that saw the dragon and the edge of this map as an opportunity to discover new territories that were worth exploring, going beyond those boundaries, those limitations. Each of us has a mental map, perhaps containing the information we use for guidance as we explore each new day. Like the maps of long ago, our mental maps may have edges, and sometimes those edges are packed and marked by dragons or fears or barriers. And sometimes those fears are valid. They may protect us. But at other times, our fears may keep us from discovering more of the world and more about ourselves and more about people and even more about God. But don't let that fear keep you from all that God desires for you to explore and to know. To know him is to love him. That is a great phrase I found growing up, and I know that God calls us to know him, and that we are really made for God and made for that relationship of faith in all creation. St. Augustine of Hippo wrote in his Confessions, he says, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in thee." The Word of God calls examples to our heart and faith and life as the living word. It's a living word because it builds on a relationship of faith. Trusting in God's righteousness, we can share in the faithfulness of God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and through it all, God has been faithful. I remember that in my early college years, I was given the opportunity to read through the Bible in its entirety in an in-depth study, and there were some books that were accompanied in that reading. One book was written by Francis Schaeffer entitled Genesis in Time and Space. This book, I discovered, was a shared journey and a truth about the importance of discovering God's faithfulness in all of creation and all of history with the Hebrew children and with us today in the covenant of his love and with his son Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. I know that God has called us to be his people and to be a part of a creation out of his love. Isaiah 43, 1-3 says, "But now, thus says the Lord, he who created you, O Jacob, he who formed you, O Israel, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior." This is comforting to know that we can discover more about God's redeeming grace and love and restoration. And we are led by the Spirit and healed and washed in his blood. The family of God. It's a great thing to be a part of the family of God, even with all of our questions at a time like this. I know David had his struggles in the Old Testament. In one of the Psalms, it's a very familiar passage, is the Psalm 139. "O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down. You are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. That I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God! How vast is the sum of them! I try to count them. They are more than the sand. I come to the end. I am still with you. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. This is an affirmation that David had as questions, and an affirmation that God was not surprised about anything. He is the creator of all that there is, and he wants to know us intimately. One of the struggles we have when we are in this pandemic situation, we have fears that can overcome us and the fear of the unknown. But I'm here to remind us that, and God is here to remind us that there's a shared victorious faith that God can see us through. There's a passage that we hear about in 1 Corinthians 13 about this everlasting love that is faithful, and that God is faithful, and that God is love. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the imperfect disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put away childish ways. Now we see but a poor reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Can we love God today and allow God's love to shape us and to guide us and to comfort us in these circumstances? I would say an amen and a yes and a hallelujah. It's the real thing. My prayer is that today we would discover just how much God loves us and cares for us, how much He loved us to share this creation. It's a good thing to know. It's true. Love is the choice that God made for us when He sent His Son into the world to redeem us and to save us from sin, that we wouldn't perish but have that everlasting life. And that life that we share is the love of God and love of neighbor as we learn more about His love for us. 1 John chapter 4, verse 16 says, "So we have known and believed the love that God has for us. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them." This is a covenant relationship of God's truth. The truth is, God does love us and want to know us and continually create in us a heart of love. Paul was a man who wrote most of the New Testament, and as he wrote another affirmation, he shared in the letter to the Romans in the 8th chapter, a powerful scripture from the 28th verse to the 38th verse. And I'll just summarize that he says, "We can know that in all things God works for good for those who love Him and have been called according to His purpose." And in conclusion, he says, "Nothing can separate us from the love of God that we find in Christ Jesus our Lord." I'm glad we have a loving God who cares and watches over us. I'm glad that we can call upon Him in prayer and build our faith on His promises and trust His holy and living word. And I pray that today, as we conclude this session, that you will enjoy the presence and purpose and the peace of Christ. For it's in His name I pray and ask a blessing, and that may God be with you till we meet again.
Thanks again for being part of the community stream. We want to ask you to join us again next week on Thursday at 10 a.m. for our next episode.